Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's just after 1 o'clock here on this Thursday. I thought I'd take a little time to hop on our digital platforms and talk more about our severe weather risk today. So, just checking some boxes and making sure that things are running smoothly on our end. And if you happen to have any questions, anything like that, I'll be answering those at the end. Let me know where you're watching from. And yeah, we'll talk about the severe weather threat because we've got back-to-back risks. Today, a pretty substantial risk, although isolated. Tomorrow, still a pretty big risk, but a bit more numerous in the storm coverage here. And so we'll break down today first. We'll spend some time talking about tomorrow. And we have other things to talk about besides the severe weather. So that's what we'll spend time on. Sounds like you guys can hear me just fine here. Got folks checking on in. We've got Susan checking in Effingham. We've got Bell watching from Stark County, Illinois. That's up in the northwestern part of the state. Allie is in Westville. And Danny is in Catlin. I always love seeing where our viewers are following us from. So thank you so much for being here. And we will roll with that. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what's happening right now and what we're looking at here. So we're going to kind of take some initial things. Then we will talk about some things to remember, and then we're going to dive into those details on why the severe weather risk today is a little bit different than maybe we would normally expect here. Currently, temperatures out there, look at that. Temperature is 91 degrees in Champaign. That is a record high for Champaign at this point, hitting 91 at Willard Airport. So we've broken the record for the day today. 89 in Springfield, we get to 91. We tie it. 92, we break it for Springfield. Very hot weather. It's 93 up in the Quad Cities for right now. Dew points, we got a lot of moisture. In fact, dew points are a little higher than I initially thought. I thought maybe what we'd see, and we still could see it happen. Sometimes we can mix that lowest level of air, and we basically pull some of that moisture higher up, and that takes your dew point numbers and drops them a little bit. Dew point 70 in Champaign, 74 in Effingham, 71 in Springfield. So there's not much shortage of moisture. That moisture can help with the instability, help get that unstable air, that extra edge. You can think of it like throwing a little bit of jet fuel on things, and it can help get those storms to pop a little more. So we're going to watch those dew point values closely here. They're a little lower to the north, a little bit higher to the south here, but certainly we're in those low 70s. And so that's something to keep an eye on. You can see that drier air off to our west that'll be coming on in. It feels like 97 in Champaign right now. May 15th, we may have our first 100-degree day here for 100-degree heat index, I should say, and the 15th of May, the way things are looking at that. 95 in Springfield, 93 in Effingham. Many of you are probably experiencing that yourself here, and so it's hot and humid out there. It feels more like summer. At least the wind is up. Sometimes I call it blast furnace weather because it's hot and then it blows around. It's like an oven, like a convection oven that's cooking things, right? Currently, the wind is 25 mile an hour in Champaign. Now, some things to note. Because we're so hot and not everywhere got rain, so potential is there for blowing dust. That is a concern potentially, especially as the dew point values drop on the backside of that front into this evening and tonight. And then the other thing is that we could see some fire danger. Now, at this point, most farmers have been in the field. So field fire is not an overall big concern, but still, I would avoid burning, discourage that for today. We're kind of past our field fire season in the spring here, early spring, but still going to watch closely because there could be a few issues where, a grassy field, things of that, kind of what we're watching for here in the region. So that's the wind. Currently on satellite and radar, I got nothing showing up on storm-wise here, and I don't think we have any storms coming until we get to about 5, 6, 7 o'clock seems to be the prime time. The later it takes, the more that front moves on through. So for the most part, some areas in western Illinois really don't have a risk today. It's more the center part of the state. You could draw a line, Interstate 39, US 51, and then we're going to add all of southern Illinois in that, but with the chance for those storms. So that's what's happening right now. Some information, some reminders. Have you thought about WeatherCall? WeatherCall is a service we offer. It's $15 a year, a small fee, and that fee just covers the cost of having servers and keeping the phones online and things of that. We'll call you as soon as a tornado warning is issued for your home location. You get a phone call. A severe thunderstorm warning, same thing. You get texts and emails as well. This is a service for some who maybe aren't as tech savvy. Maybe the smartphone isn't their thing. They have a landline phone at home. We think this is great for businesses and schools to sign up for to get that. It's fixed location based. That differs from the app. And so WeatherCall might be a service that is good for you. WCIA.com/weather. WeatherCall. And I'm going to drop the QR code here. And then also it should pop up in the chat. If you're following, you should see a little box. You can click on that. It'll take you to the site for that to sign up. A great service that is location-based, specific, a fixed location service. That is different than our weather app. If you've got a smartphone, another way to get that weather information is right here. Just download the WCI3 weather app on your phone, right? And when you have that, it will follow your location. So maybe you're in Champaign and you've got a ball game down in Effingham, or you're driving to Springfield to see some friends and family. When you set your location settings to follow your locations, as you're driving, if there's warnings issued where you are, boom, you get the notification. WeatherCall will only call you for your home location. But again, two different services, slightly different uses for that, but something worth considering there. WeatherCall, again, is wci.com/weather/weathercall. Check the chat that you're watching on digital platforms for that link, or scan that QR code. And then the app is free. All you have to have is a smartphone or smart device, and you can download that for Android and Apple devices. Let's talk tornado safety real quick here. I think I want to recap these and just kind of bring them up because that to me is kind of important to talk about. First off, thinking about where you're sheltering, just a reminder, we've had some practice this spring, haven't we? Cars, bad. Mobile homes, bad. If you're driving, don't stop under a highway overpass. The Hollywood movies are wrong about that. Where do you want to go? Tornado shelter, a basement, a safe room, an interior room, center part of your home, lowest wind floor, no windows, as many outside walls between you and it as possible. When I teach kids in school, I typically teach in, down, up. In, interior, down as low as you can, basement, crawl space, bathtub, lowest low floor of your home. And that in also counts for that interior as many walls. So we've got in, down. Then they always are like, what's up? Cover up, right? Blankets, pillows, mattress, bike helmet. That might be something to grab as well, because your head is really important for that to have here. So that's just some reminders for you of dealing with that. Let's go ahead and do the staying informed. First off, review emergency plans. Download our app. Consider signing up for WeatherCall and other services. Also, if you are concerned, this may be more wind and hail in addition to tornado. But help your neighbors. Say, hey, Jacob's been talking about this. Kevin Leidy's been talking about this. Seth and Adam have been talking about this. And as we're going through the event, if you see us talking about a town that you know someone in, you can still text or call them and say, hope you're watching Channel 3. They're following these storms in the storm tracker. It's coming your way. And so you just kind of an initial review of those plans and things of that. I also want to stress real quick the difference between a watch and a warning. A watch means watch out. Watch, it's possible. And that means we could see that. I expect a tornado watch. I do for a good chunk of our area here. And that's for the conditions being favorable. It's possible, right? A watch means it's possible that we could see tornadoes in that. We can have tornadoes without a watch. That's happened before. We can have a watch and have no tornadoes. And that may end up being the case today. Maybe not tomorrow. But if we do get a warning, that's when you take those action plans here. Your safe place. You're getting an in, down, up. And watching us coverage online, on your app, Facebook, wherever you get your severe weather coverage for that. All right, this is what many of you are here for. Let's talk about today. The storm ingredients for today are a little bit unique. We don't typically see events like this pan out. A lot of times we get a front coming through and storms blow up along the entire front, and it's a line sweeping through our area. Today, the risk for storms is isolated, and here's why. First off, there's a ton of instability. That's the first thing storms need. We got a lot of it today. You can feel it in the air. The second thing is wind shear. If the instability is able to freely bring those storms, those towering cumulonimbus thunderstorms into the upper atmosphere, it can tap into that wind shear. And looking at some of the data from this morning, I was really impressed with that wind shear that's over central Illinois, really over much of the state here. And so can those storms take the instability, rise up, jump into that jet stream, get that favorable wind shear from the surface upwards for severe weather? That sometimes happens, and sometimes it happens all over the place. And, you have more storms, they can interact. But this is the key here. There's a strong lid on the atmosphere right now. Maybe you've been at home and you've been making, boiling a pot of water for pasta, right? Who hasn't done that? If you put a lid on that pot, it keeps things from boiling over. But eventually that may boil over and that lid will start to rattle as the steam under there tries to escape. And then the more that under there it's shaking, the more it's rattling, the more likely that finally that lid is going to lift. Well, that instability, that surface area, it's madder than hornets out there. I mean, it is going to be angry and it wants to just explode into the air, but it's also a very strong lid on there, right? We're pressing down on that to hold it in place, a very explosive type of environment. And so the question is, how well does that lid hold? We think it holds for many areas, but a few areas could have a pop-up storm that turns into a big severe weather problem for you here. So showing you the instability here on the map, first off, look at all that red. There is plenty of fuel, an abundance of that here across the area. What about the lid on top of that? Well, when we look at that atmospheric cap here, what I'm going to show you is, we'll bring you through. If we look at the cap, what that is basically a warm layer of air aloft that prevents air from rising. As air rises, it wants to cool off. If it hits air that's warmer than it, it will stop rising. Too strong of a cap, no storms form. For many areas, this may be the case. The difference today is that we may have a spot where the cap is just right. And when it's just right, we get isolated storms, but those can be intense, severe storms. When the cap is too weak, and we see this more often, I think, around here, you start getting storms just going up all over the place. And those storms start to interact with each other, and they prevent each other from dominating and taking strong hold of things. And so you get a lot of storms, and yeah, you can still have severe weather, but they're not necessarily going to be long duration, intense storms here. We're kind of riding in this area right here. We could get through today with no storms. That's on the table. At this point, I'm growing more and more confident that we at least will have 1 or 2 storms. Think of the size of our viewing area and how 1 or 2 storms is. That means for you, the odds are good that you probably don't have to deal with a severe weather threat. But if you do, this is the key. Isolated and specifically intense storms. These are the types of storms that can give us tornadoes, those supercell thunderstorms, and also big hail and wind. But if they're isolated, might affect one town. Next town down the road is dry as a bone from these coming on through. And so that can be what we see with that here. First off, impact-wise, I'm going to talk about both real quick here. We're going to focus on round 1 first. We'll hit round 2 second. That isolated means there's a few storms with coverage there. And why don't I bring this full screen so you can read it a little bit better. That coverage is the isolated nature. There's a few storms is it, but the intensity is high on that. Big hail, tornado risk, wind with any storm that can take hold. There may be some storms that try to form, and we see them starting to blow up a little bit more. It looks like, oh man, the cap's breaking. There's a lot of storms. The cap can still choke those off and keep them from forming, and we still may only have 1 or 2 intense storms that have the biggest impacts here. So that's what we're watching for today, 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. Round number 2, the coverage is more numerous tomorrow. And there's still going to be some intense storms out of that here. Particularly, we're watching a specific area tomorrow for that. More on that map coming up there. But this gives you an idea of back-to-back days of potentially significant severe weather here in central Illinois and across the state as well. We don't always have back-to-back days. Usually we get a day and then we get a break. But it's boom, boom, back-to-back, just how it works for us this time here. So what's the risk area? What's the latest from the storm predictions there? We're at a slight risk today in yellow. The reason we're at that slight risk is because the coverage is not numerous or widespread. 1, 2, maybe 3. I mean, that's the idea here. You can't go higher in that risk level when you have only a couple of storms out there. And so that's something to consider where, yes, it's a slight risk. If we had 5, 6, 7, 8 storms, it's the type of risk where we would be higher on this scale here, to give you an idea. But because the coverage is isolated, we don't have a higher risk that's in place here. There's the enhanced risk from basically Danville up towards Pontiac into the north and east here. That's that level 3 risk that's been expanded into our area. And then you see here the level 1 risk, Taylorville, Lincoln, Springfield, and West. I'm not convinced there's going to be much problem here. They may form here, but they're going to quickly move to the east. And so that means there's a very narrow window of opportunity for places that are out in that direction, which is perhaps some good news with that there. So that's the SPC outlook for today. When we dig down more into the details, coverage, 1 or 2. Probably your ears are probably bleeding from me saying that. We're not getting a lot of storms, but if we get those storms, they're very intense storms here. Tennis ball size hail, 70, 80 mile per hour winds, and those storms would have a medium tornado threat with them here. Because they're isolated, flooding, not a big deal, but you can get some really heavy rain in that 1 or 2 storms there. And it's all about that cap. If the cap holds strong, we're good. One spot is all it needs to be a little weaker, a little more instability, and to have those things rise up and take advantage of that. Let's walk you through future track here and show you what we're looking at. So first off, 3 o'clock, nothing. 4:35, almost 6 o'clock, still nothing. Let me check here. I'm not sure my data is actually populating in there. And if that's the case, I'll fix it and come back because I'm not seeing a cloud cover on there. So let me just check real quick here. And there's that. Looks like it may have updated. So this particular run of Future Track, and there's been some things to kind of keep an eye on here. I had an earlier one. Don't trust this word for word. Don't look at this and think that this is what's happening for sure. We're looking at trends here at this point and how things may pan out. But 4, 5 o'clock, not much. See here, 5, 6, 1, 2 storms in the northern part of the state. Still a lot of quiet time here. The question will be in that 5, 6, 7 range is how weak is that cap? We got a little extra moisture, so we could see some more storms. But for the most part, 7 o'clock, look, there's just one storm that's showing up there, another one down there. A lot of us in here are clear. Now, this storm could be here. That storm could be here, right? Somebody's probably watching, oh, it's not in Champaign, I'm okay. We still have a risk because the storm isn't necessarily in this exact spot at 7:15. It's the trend that we keep an eye on. Something that guidance has done is it brings that front through, and you'll see here, it starts to erupt those storms even 8 o'clock, not out of the woods yet. But see how it's a little bit more coverage here, a little bit more spots here and there. I'm not sure what happens at this point is actually going to be the case, but you see here that it shows more clusters of storms. Now, 1, 2, 3, and then some others here. This is a trying, but maybe the cap chokes it off. So you get the idea that these are isolated storms that are carrying on through. By 10, 11 o'clock, we're done. I don't think we're going to have any severe weather after 11 p.m. here as those storms do exit. We'll get a quiet night and a quiet start to tomorrow. There's that risk, tornado risk of 5 out of 10. Again, because of the isolated nature of these storms. And the next SPC outlook comes out later this afternoon for this evening. Maybe they say, you know what, the guidance is thinking more storms. They may increase that 7 into our area. If we had more storms, then the risk we're talking about is higher on this scale here. But if we're only dealing with that 1 or 2 that we are currently expecting now, I think a 5 is an appropriate number. But let's say a storm forms right here ahead of that storm. Now your risk is more like a 7 or 8. And so we'll just watch and see where that pans out. I know folks are saying, well, I'm here and I'm there. Where's it going to happen? I don't know where these storms are actually going to happen. I don't know where that weakest spot in the cap will be, but I know what happens when those storms pop. And so we'll just have to wait and see exactly where those storms start to pop here in the area. And when they do, you got to watch out. So you'll be watching with us. We'll be here. Full team's going to be in monitoring things. Those storms also are going to allow for a large hail risk. Again, 1 or 2 storms. The risk for tennis or even baseball-sized hail is there for a good chunk of east central Illinois. Not much of a risk here out to the west. So does that mean it's going to be tennis ball size hail in Mattoon and Paris and Champaign and Decatur? No. But if a storm comes through here, along that path of that storm would be the risk for tennis ball or potentially even some baseball size hail. So hopefully that makes sense for that. Wind, going to go with 70 mile per hour gusts here. You can kind of see there could be an isolated storm that has that 75 potential, but for the most part here, we're going to be seeing a lot of us aren't going to have that severe weather risk. But if you get that storm, this is what we're looking at here. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse on things, but that's kind of what we're looking at for that. Here's the run for Future Track now. We're looking at Friday. And I haven't had a lot of time to break into Friday, but I do recognize that the risk is there Friday, and there will be more storms Friday than there will be today, what we expect here. So notice how Friday into the afternoon, evening, Future Track is trying to pick these individual storms in here. That's something that it's been suggesting, and that's why that risk is higher. There's a chance we could see a line of storms sweep on through as well. Some guidance is saying it's a line. Some is saying it's not. And so I'll show you a different version of that here at the end. But when we deal with Friday, kind of mentioning that now for the back of your minds, we did get an update from the Storm Prediction Center. They have now introduced a level 4 moderate risk for the I-70 corridor. Cumberland County, Clark County, Effingham County, Crawford, Jasper, Fayette counties is where that 4 risk is. It's a 3 then for places like Mattoon, Charleston, Tuscola, Paris, Shelbyville, Taylorville, a 2 from Danville and along the I-72 and I-74 corridors up to the north with that there. So the better risk is going to be south, but we still can't see severe storms all the way through our area tomorrow. And so looking at that tornado risk, currently it sits at a 7 out of 10 for tomorrow. I think there's more storms tomorrow, which helps that number go up a little bit. Effingham, Toledo, Casey, Terre Haute, up towards Mattoon, Charleston, and south of Paris there, where that 7 is. A lot of us are sitting in the 5, and then it does wane with north and west extent for that tornado risk there. So this is that back-to-back risk here for the statewide. You notice the 5 goes all the way down into southern Illinois. There could be in the entire state maybe 4, 5, 6 storms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Probably be a few more storms in northeastern Illinois. That's kind of, to me, the bullseye area. That may creep down, and we might get that storm here, Ford, Livingston, Iroquois County. We could see a storm in the middle, another storm down there. I mean, you get the idea of kind of where that front is and how things are progressing. Tomorrow, Friday, the highest risk is in the southern part of the state, but we still do have a risk carrying all the way north. 3 out of 10, still nothing to sneeze at, but we'll keep an eye on that and see how things evolve. But back-to-back days with that severe weather potential. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the guidance for the next couple of days. This is a different look, and this is what we're dealing with. And you see here that this afternoon, 4 o'clock, nothing happening. 6:30, this particular run starts to bring a few of these storms on in. There's 8:30, 1, 2 intense storms. Maybe the cap holds stronger down there. We'll see. 11 o'clock, we're done here for the night. Tomorrow, notice how in the afternoon it starts to bring more of these clusters and storms in. This is where we have to watch for that risk for wind, hail, and tornadoes again in the afternoon and evening hours. And by tomorrow night, then again, we'll clear things out, have a quiet weekend in front of us. I'm already tired. And I tell you what, we'll take the quiet weekend. Let's see if we got the graphic updated here. I'll just briefly pop it up. There's another risk. I'm going to manually do this here. And we'll see if this works. This here is for Tuesday. There's another risk of severe weather already for next Tuesday. I don't want to talk about it, right? But we will come deal with it as it goes. And the weekend looks quiet. Can I end with some good news? Let's just get that weekend forecast up real fast here. Weekend looking fine. We're fine Saturday. We're fine Sunday. Nice, beautiful weekend. Quiet. Get some rest, and then we have more storms into next week as well. Okay, that is what I'm ending with here. Again, no cap. It's all about the cap today, right? That's kind of what we're watching for that risk as we see things. How strong is it? No cap's that slang, term kids use to say no lie, just trying to be hip with the times. That's me, right? It's about the cap, though. If it stays strong, no storms. And that may happen for a large majority of our area. In a few spots, it may weaken to be just right. And then we get an isolated storm, and that's a problem. 2 week, we get storms all over the place. This is probably more what will happen on Friday for a good chunk of the state. But you could still get intense storms with those, and we'll worry about Friday as it comes. That's it. I got to wrap up here. I actually got to get ready to get in the storm tracker. I'm going to do a quick scroll and things here. I will say storms are going to be moving about 50 mile an hour forward speed, so they'll be moving pretty quick. So that is going to happen, but just be aware. We will know when the storms are happening. It's not like this is just going to form right over you and 5 minutes later. They're going to pop up, and we'll start to track them pretty early on. And, if you look to the west and southwest and something's coming your way, that's probably a sign to you that you need to start thinking about what to do if that storm continues to strengthen. There may be more than 1 or 2 storms that tries to strengthen. We could have 4 or 5. I mean, I'll say that. I think what happens is there may be a couple of dominant ones that are particularly intense. We've got others that are trying. The cap chokes them off. So it's an attempt and it kind of fails, but a couple of them will kind of hit the sweet spot right there is what we're expecting. Dave's watching up in Beaverville. I have a feeling the farther north you are is the better risk here. Iroquois, Ford, Livingston counties probably has a really good chance of seeing something. We'll keep an eye on that. Sherry's in Greenup. The spring festival pageant's outside tonight. It might be a nice night for it. If you don't get that storm, you'll be like, wow, they were wrong, right? We're not wrong. But the idea here is isolated storms. So fingers crossed it doesn't come near you, because if it does, it'll be pretty rough for that. Marcus asking if I approved it to be hot. No, I did not. That was all Seth. Robert's asking about hail having a higher threat. What county EMAs sound warning sirens for? They're warning sirens, not watching sirens. A watch means it's possible. Warning means it's happening. So that's a clarity point there. For destructive hail is typically greater than golf balls. I think they do that at baseball size hail, but they're all different. You may want to just check in with your EMA about that. I always tell people when it comes to those tornado sirens, they're technically outdoor warning sirens, which Robert has acknowledged. What that should tell you is You need to get some information, and you probably should just come here. We'll probably be on air if that's happening, or at least on digital platforms. And so think of warning sirens as heads up, something's happening. You need more information. And I think that's the best way to treat those things. If they're sounding them, they're not just sounding them for fun, right? It's going to be because something may end up coming in the direction of that. There may be a list somewhere back here. I'll have to check with Kevin later, though. Here's an example. Bill asking, we have a baseball game in Catlin at 6 tonight. Should we be concerned? I think this is a type of event where you got to know what to do. But for a lot of us, the night's going to be okay, right? If a storm is coming and you have your plan, then you're set, right? That's not something that I'm worried about here in particular. Kathleen's asking, what about my grass seed? You probably should water it if you need to today. Tomorrow, a lot of us probably get more rain. Not many of us should end up with rain today if the forecast holds. So that's something that's important. We got Woodworth checking in, needs some rain. Today's the type of day where you don't want rain because that rain comes with the big hail, the tornado threat, the strong winds. It's not like we get a nice rain for that. Did I miss a question? Emily asking, will any of us be in a tornado watch? I think a good chunk of us will. That's something to think about with that. And you'll get that notice first. You get a text from WeatherCall. Your app will notify you. We'll be posting things online. So yes, I think there will be tornado watches. Sometime between 4 and 7, they'll be issued. Let's see if there's any other questions. Tom is asking again, if storms do develop, will they track or dissipate fairly quickly? I think they're going to track pretty good here if they can maintain this equilibrium point. The cap could choke a few of them off, but once they hit this sweet spot, there's a good chance they're going to go for quite a long period of time off to the east and northeast there. Seeing what else we got. I'm going to get in trouble. The center of the universe, that is Philo, isn't it? Christy, are you from Philo? They say there. I'm pretty sure that. It's a Champaign County town. It's not Sodorus. It's not Sydney. I think it's Philo. They call them. They have it on the water tower, I think. There. Christy will let me know if I'm wrong there. Will I be in the storm tracker? Yes, I will be in the storm tracker tonight. Don't quite know where I'm going yet, Carrie, but we will watch and see what happens. Kind of score. A lot of folks asking about specific towns, about specific counties. I'm going to wrap the video up here. If you need to get that information, rewatch this video. It'll be a great way for you to get that. But for the most part here, anticipating that, we're looking at a couple of isolated storms coming through with some big severe weather potential. That means a lot of us are okay. You just got to know, do I know exactly where they'll be? I don't. Do I know what happens when they form? Yes. Big hail, tornado risk with them is what we watch with this type of event. That's what I got for you. I'm going to wrap up and get things going in the storm tracker, get set up, take care of things. And so Kevin will be in with Seth here this evening.